Hey everybody, just wanted to chime in on this concept of habit and habit formation. I've mentioned this many times before, but I think it's necessary given that there's a question that's come from one of my audience members related to habit cycles and why it's difficult to get out of bad procrastination cycles. I'll answer this in two parts. Number one, understanding the value of deep work. Number two, recognizing how to build better habits in order for you to get back into deep work quickly. So I'll relate a story. There was a point of time where I found myself getting into flow, right? So that my deep work was really, really intense and really, really powerful. And I really loved that experience. So getting into flow was almost like a paradise. I was getting work done. I was finishing up recordings, all that kind of stuff. But one thing that I noticed was that every time my cat would come in, I get irritated. Every time my partner would walk in, I would also get distracted and found it really difficult to get back into the flow again. So I did what any irrational person would do. I would shout at them, right? So it's not a good idea to lose it because you lost it. Whenever you get out of flow, it's necessary for you to figure out how to get back into flow rather than blaming the external circumstances around it. So this was a reminder that anybody who's especially done meditation or mindfulness meditation for that fact, if you're doing it in a quiet room, that's the lowest hanging fruit. You definitely will be able to get into a mindful state. Problem is if you have to step away from a compelling or difficult situation, like maybe your boss is giving you a shelling and can you imagine telling your boss, hang on, I need to go meditate because you're getting a bit irksome. You go out, sit in a room and then you come back and then tell your boss, okay, please carry on. You can't have control over that. What it means is that you need to be able to be dancing in the storm, especially in the storm that has got lightning, there's lots of challenges and dangers and it's extremely cold. Reason why I mentioned that is because you cannot allow yourself to look beyond what's inside of here, the who you are, what you do, your own responses, because responsibility actually comes from the word response and ability, right? So if you put those two together, what is your response to dropping out of flow? So I'll explain flow a little bit first, then we'll talk about deep work, which is Cal Newport's idea. Whereas flow is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's idea. You can check it out in his book called Flow. Very well written research about how people get such focus that they no longer have to keep track of time. Time seems to whiz by so quickly, and they're so engaged with the thing that they're doing. So deep work is kind of like an extension of that. It's like getting such a hyper amount of focus that you produce the highest possible quality of work. So here I am sitting in front of my camera and I'm realizing that, hey, I've got neurolinguistic programming skills. Why don't I program my mind? So the first thing that I did was I took a look at my environment and I asked myself, how is my environment supporting my deep work? How do I get in flow quickly? So there are a few things that you need to do, right? Firstly is if you're constantly distracted, rather than rehearsing that until you become really good at it, which by the way is the mastery triangle, you can go check out one of my videos on the mastery triangle. Essentially, we're talking about three key things: language, repetition, intensity. Intensity of what? Whatever goes on inside your mind that impacts your emotional state. The use of the mastery triangle has to be applied to a cycle of a correct procedure. So if you have tied your shoelaces, the more you do that, the more masterful you get at tying the shoelaces to a point where you can close your eyes and you can be blindfolded, you can be turned 180 degrees around, disoriented. You can probably still tie your shoelaces. So the point is this: can you go into autopilot? I know some people tend to use autopilot as a bad word, but come on, your heart needs to beat on autopilot, right? If you are going to have to be conscious about your heart beating or your blood circulating or your breathing, you're going to be in serious trouble. So coming back to the idea of the mastery triangle, you want to go through procedures that are complete. Problem why people procrastinate is because they don't have complete ideas about how to, complete stuff. So you end up getting stuck, and you probably don't have many good practices. For example, time blocking is a very good practice. For example, listing down and visualizing exactly what needs to be done so that you follow the procedures and get it done, right? So most people don't do either of those. So if you time block and you don't have concrete procedures to follow, you're going to have to spend a lot more time figuring things out along the way. So you try something, it doesn't work, you go back and you iterate it again and again, and then you realize, oh, maybe I should do this. Then this doesn't work, and then you reiterate it again. And sometimes it gets so frustrating that you just stop. So what I highly recommend everybody to do is to develop a procedural mind so that you're process oriented and very, very concrete. It doesn't come from having to overthink stuff. That's not what I'm saying. But surely when you're taking a look at what you need to get done and you're not really sure how exactly to get it done, surely you've got to simulate it first, right? Surely you've got to test it out in some shape or form. I prefer to do it in the form of flowcharts. I prefer to do it in the form of mental simulation so that I can see the procedure in front of me. Why? Because when I follow it, I can utilize some form of value stream mapping to discover stage 1 to stage 2. How long did it take last week? And am I improving on it this week? You see, there's always the thing about the goal of improvement that makes people want to do better and better work each time. So that you get into flow because there's a challenge, it's meaningful for you, it's purposeful, it's aligned with your values, and you've written down a SMART goal. If you don't write down SMART goals, you're probably going to end up languishing anyway. So if the goals are at least set, you can work towards something that can be classified as an achievement. And how do you get there? Well, you get into the correct states by putting in the correct language, the internal self-talk, dialogue, the physiology that will help you to execute on the mastery triangle, build up the intensity of those emotions that get you to execute on that task, and then keep repeating it again and again and again. Look, I'm not a person who's very programming oriented, right? As in like computer programming, but I kind of know a thing or two about WordPress in particular and some things about the code structure in some programs that I can use slight modifications or I can execute on them. And one of the things is when I first started using WordPress, and if any of you have ever tried using WordPress, sometimes it's a pain in the butt, right? So what we need to do is to get familiar with it. What some people do, however, is they outsource it without first optimizing it. So I know for a fact that I need to optimize it or optimize my skills in using WordPress. Why? Because for the longest time, every time I built up a decent website, it would get hacked or something will happen to the structure, and then I'll just completely give up. And a lot of people run into that problem of giving up and then just simply outsourcing the problem. Whereas in reality, the problem is you, and you need to find ways to deal with that problem so that you become stronger, you become more resilient, you become more powerful. If you're able to do that, I guarantee you the next hack won't bother you. You would have gone through all the procedures necessary to safeguard your risks and ensure business continuity. Now, if this is the first time you're hearing about the way to do it like this, chances are you're not really a process-oriented individual. I highly encourage you to learn about this through either one of my coaching programs or through neurolinguistic programming and the modeling process behind it. So let's come back to the issue of not being able to get into deep work because you're distracted or you're procrastinating. When you procrastinate with that level of intensity, you languish, but you also end up becoming far more, shall I say, used to it. So the deeper you get into it, your brain goes into long-term potentiation, meaning to say two different neurons are going to fire at the same time, creating a linkage that is so difficult to break that, you are going to stay there. It's almost like the unconscious autopilot that you don't want. But since you can do that, then you've got to ask yourself, what were the conditions that led you to that? Number one, as I mentioned, you didn't have a clear goal. Number two, even if you had a clear goal, it was not aligned, it was not purposeful, not meaningful, and so on. Number three, it's very, very likely that your execution of those goals was not precise and you weren't able to get into a mastery cycle. In other words, you started by installing WordPress, but you never got beyond that. You can install WordPress 1,000 times and you're only gonna be good at installing WordPress. The other thing that you'll need to do is set up the design. Maybe you don't have the capabilities to do the design, outsource it, get a template, buy a template, whatever it might be, and then figure out how to do those things as well. So if you did not find yourself getting into deep work, chances are the thing that you said that you will do on your to-do list in your calendar, chances are those things are vague and not process oriented. Oh, write my book. Okay, hang on, write your book can go 1,001 ways. How about saying complete the table of contents, review it, and send it out to 5 people for comments? Something like that is far more tangible, far more concrete as an initial procedure to take a high-level abstract goal and then breaking it down into more concrete and mid-term goals or short-term goals. So if you found yourself procrastinating over getting one particular goal done and you've listed it and it's been there for weeks or maybe even months, delete it, atomize it. Take, for example, I don't know, washing the bathroom, right? Maybe you haven't washed the bathroom for a year. So what can you do? Instead of listing down wash the bathroom, which to you, come on, it makes perfect sense, just wash it. No. First thing that you might need to do to a really dusty or old bathroom is to, let's say, as concrete as you can, get water and fill up a pail, right? And then use the pail of water to wet the floor. The moment it's wet, you have no choice, right? You at least have to get started. So the key behind it is becoming so concrete that your brain knows exactly what to do, so that when you do put it on a schedule, you know roughly how long it takes to get done. So that's the key. Once you're able to do that, it becomes so much easier. Then, what are the other ingredients that are required for this mini project? I call it a project. But let's say you need your scrub, your brush. You need to make sure that you close off the doors. You make sure that you have no leakage, up to your room and stuff like that. And you go get the setup done. Get the setup done. Fill up your pail. Splash it on the floor. Start using the scrub to scrub whatever is necessary and so on. Sooner or later, you're gonna get the thing done. And guess what? The more you visualize it, the more your brain recognizes exactly what to do, and it becomes more compelled to get it done. Right? So some of you will probably go like, that's kind of trite, but I'm dealing with things which are much more complex. Like I want to, submit a proposal to this particular company so that they'll take up my consulting package, right? And the truth is, it's exactly the same thing. Create proposal. Your brain doesn't understand how to execute that. Whereas if you said create proposal by step 1, identify learning or consulting objectives. Number 2, review previous conversations and identify core problem statements that I can solve. Number 3, list down the problem statements in a Word document. Number 4, identify all the actions that can be taken in order to resolve these problems, and so on and so forth, right? So it's not too difficult for you to understand, I hope, that it's about atomization and breaking down the goals. The moment you are able to execute on it, you'll find that certain steps actually only take you about 5 to 10 minutes. And the more you do it, the more optimized they can become. So don't be mistaken to think that procrastination habits are due to, my life sucks, I'm a terrible person and all that. Take responsibility. What can you do? Well, number 1, shift your emotional states. Shifting your emotional states is the landmark, a hallmark of neurolinguistic programming, right? So if you feel down, shift your physiology, change your breathing, change your eye gaze. You probably don't know about eye gaze, right? When I gaze intently, I shift my emotional states in a powerful way. If I shift my eyes to become glazed over, right, then that's a completely different look and that's a completely different state. The way your muscular tension works is that how tense your eyes are will determine the emotional state that you're in. Likewise, your breathing controls a lot of your emotional state. Now look, it doesn't take a genius to know that you're angry versus you're excited, right? Because of the difference in terms of your breathing. It's even easier to detect whether someone is unhappy or whether somebody is calm. These two things don't usually go together with the same kind of breathing pattern. So you've got at least two ways to change your physiology, which is to change your eye gaze. The second one is to change your breathing, which will inadvertently change your posture. The next thing that you'll need to do in order to access emotional states effectively is to rehearse them regularly. Now look, in the morning when you wake up, do you get yourself into a state where you're revising powerful emotions from the past, bringing it back into your body? We call that a somatic embodiment. Bring it back into your body and then feel good feelings. Now, I'll even go one step further, because neurolinguistic programming says as long as you have a certain gesture or certain movement, you can anchor that emotional state at its highest peak so that you can constantly revisit it again and again and again. And that becomes very powerful, because now all I do is in the morning, I fire off an anchor, I feel really good, then I start thinking about what goals I want to accomplish, right? So that's the way to get into a habituated cycle. Feel good for no good reason, because we've all been conditioned to feel bad for no good reason. And when you feel good for no good reason, you tap into strengths, you tap into a reservoir of capability rather than limitation. So as a sum up, why do we procrastinate and why do we not get into deep work? Is because we haven't created triggers to get into deep work regularly. We are not in flow. We are out of flow all the time, that we practice getting out of flow. And every time we get out of flow, it takes us a long time to get back. Hey, I've got a procedure, literally. When I go out of flow, I stand up, I shift my physiology, I come back immediately. And then I ask myself, how much time do I have left? Within that span of time, I accomplish something specific, and I show myself that I can get back into flow. It's all about deadlines, it's all about being concrete and specific, and it's all about setting your mind to not give up every time you drop out of flow and deep work, right? Because otherwise what's going to happen is you're going to rehearse the mastery cycle of getting out of flow. Then when will you ever be able to get deep work done? Okay, so there are a few things, other things that you can do in order to get you into deep work. The first one is known as forward momentum, right? So if your body is constantly like this and you're leaning back and you're doing this, this posture is a rehearsal for your brain to take a step back, right? So I wouldn't, I mean, you can look at it in any way you like, but the truth is that if I'm sitting back like that and I'm lounging, it is a backward movement or a stoppage process inside my brain. Whereas if I'm leaning forward like that and I'm looking at my goal and I'm aiming, right, my posture is literally leaning forward. This bodily posture gives me a completely different sense of what I need to do, right, or how I intend to move. So how do you create physical forward momentum? Well, there are a few ways to do it. Number one is to literally change your posture so that it creates a state that mimics forward momentum, either moving forward, thrusting forward, all of these kinds of actions that your body will then be using as a message to your mind. The second one is to do it physically. For example, I do workouts and I have a very clear set of goals that I want to accomplish. This literally is creating a parallel, right, inside my mind and my body. So I have a workout routine. I say I'll accomplish, 5,000 kgs worth of lifts today. And then I go get it done and I aim to hit that target. And every time I aim to hit that target, I will make sure that it's concrete, it's specific, and I go through the mastery cycle. When the pain comes, I embrace it. I go like, yes, this is what I was aiming for. Let's go. Doesn't mean I like it. Just means that I've aimed for it and I've achieved the goal that I wanted to achieve. Now, every time I feel like giving up, I take a pause and then I quickly come back to getting it done. So they call it a rest pause, right? So I've done like 9 bicep curls and I just need that one more, right? So I'll struggle with it. If it's painful, I'll just go with it because I'm aiming for completion of that mastery cycle. Okay, so what does that do? The moment your body goes into this, no, I have to complete it. We must complete it. Then you will train your mind to get closer towards that outcome rather than backing off. Okay, so the more you do this, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's like you see stuff in the sink and it's not cleaned up. Go clean it up. That's a completion cycle. It's going to train your brain to have completion. Likewise, there are certain situations where you want to rehearse habits like holding your tongue. That means it's not a completion cycle, it's literally a cut off cycle, so that you say something that's nasty and it causes an upset within a community or within the family, then you want to learn how to hold your tongue. So that also requires you to set the triggers. Like if something's gonna get uncomfortable, just take in a deep breath, say, I had a part to play in that as well. I'm just gonna do something that's useful for the family right now. Then you go clean the dishes, wash the floor, whatever it might be, and just do something good in place of something that's not so good. So as a result of that, you're likely to find that the internal reframing that you do is very likely to get you into better cycles of tolerance and patience. Again, I get ahead of myself. The idea is that if you want to really do good work and deep work, you have to get into flow. You need to find ways to control your physiology and your emotional states. And once you're able to do that, the rest of it is history. So I hope that this has been kind of beneficial for you, especially for those of you who are struggling with languishing, struggling with, oh gosh, there's this emotional state that I don't know how to control. Well, it's not about control. It's about focus. It's about knowing what specifically needs to be done in the next step. And if you don't really know what to do in the next step, I highly recommend that you take up a neurolinguistic programming practitioner training program in order for you to be at least a little bit better at understanding how to procedurally look at how others behave, hopefully model great things from them, but also hopefully get awareness of what kinds of processes you're really not doing well. And then you should be able to take a step back and say, all right, let's recalibrate. I need to do it this way instead, and then keep doing it to completion, to mastery, anchor yourself to feel good about executing on that. And then once you have done it many, many times over, that's it. You've built up a new habit. Of course, I can go into things like the swish pattern and so on, but I think I'll leave that for another video. And I highly recommend that you recognize there are more than one ways to, get this done. Whatever I'm saying comes from my experience and my expertise in building the habits that I never used to have. I never used to work out. Right now, I literally work out at least 4 to 5 times a week, if at the bare minimum, 3 times a week. That kind of brings to mind a period of time where I was so busy and I was flirting with burnout, right? And at that point of time, I gave up on workouts. I didn't have time to do it anymore and so on, which obviously is BS. Truth is, I've got 5 minutes to sit down and complain about stuff. I could do 2 sets of an exercise. So what I realized was that, wow, I actually left off. I gave myself excuses. I could leave off for 1 week, and then it became 2 weeks, it became 3 weeks, it became like 3 months. So what I did was I deliberately sat down and said, what happened when I was able to turn this into a habit? I followed my schedule, right? And that's one of the problems. For most of us, we take a look at our calendar, we don't even follow it. It's something to be muted. What do? You have now created mastery, muting your notifications. And no wonder you don't get stuff done. Instead, I now built in a habit of going to my project management folder, looking at all the things I need to get done, see if it's breakdownable. Can I atomize it? And then if I atomize it, it becomes really, really clear that this is what exactly I need to do. My brain finds it friendly. It naturally gravitates towards that. And then I will schedule them, right? I'll put it into my calendar so that I can have a list of all the things that I've actually done during the day. And then I anchor all the good feelings that I feel after having the sense of accomplishment. And it's great. So I'd like you to recognize that in the hustle and bustle of life, habits can get built, but habits can get broken because you're constantly going through this tussle. Your brain isn't even aware what's interrupting some of these good habits that you used to have. And if you don't recalibrate and get back on track, then you're probably going to lose it forever. So do you want to get on track? Do you think this is valuable? Do you think this is viable? If you think so, then go to the link down in the description box below. Hook up over a coffee or a conversation on Zoom, and we'll see whether we can get you sorted. In the meanwhile, if you like this video, hit the like, subscribe button, and then I'll see you in my next video. Take care. Bye.